Giant grasshopper rampage. Beginning of the end. In 1957's Beginning of the End, giant grasshoppers invade Chicago in what was meant to be a terrifying spectacle. Instead, the film's low-budget effects, real grasshoppers crawling over photos of cityscapes, produced more laughter than fear. The insects, indifferent to their roles, often wandered off set or simply sat still, undermining any sense of menace. Actors did their best to react with terror, but the disconnect between their performance and the uncooperative bugs was impossible to ignore. Critics at the time were merciless, but the film has since gained a cult following for its earnest attempts at horror and its delightfully unconvincing monsters. Today, the Grasshopper Rampage is remembered as a prime example of how limited resources can turn intended scares into cinematic comedy. Spider Scale Fiasco: Earth vs. the Spider. Released in 1958, Earth vs. the Spider set out to terrify, but instead became a showcase for atomic age excess. Directed by Bird-Eye Gordon, nicknamed Mr. Big for his love of oversized monsters. The film featured a giant tarantula menacing the town of River Falls. Yet the horror was often undercut by technical blunders and inconsistent effects. The spider's rampage was cobbled together with rear projection and miniature sets, but the results were wildly uneven. In one scene, the creature towers over a high school auditorium. In the next, it's barely larger than a car. These abrupt shifts in scale made it seem as if the spider was constantly changing size, unintentionally adding to the film's camp appeal. While some enthusiasts have speculated that these inconsistencies were a sly nod to the genre's excesses, the film itself plays it straight. Actors were often directed to react to a rubber spider off camera, and while the main creature was a real tarantula projected onto miniatures, close-ups relied on practical props, sometimes with comic results. Bill Warren's Keep Watching the Skies notes that Gordon's heavy use of rear projection frequently exposed the prop's flimsy construction, with one infamous shot showing a wall buckling under the spider's weight. Contemporary reviews were unkind, calling the film more amusing than frightening. A monster movie misfire. Yet Earth vs. the Spider found its audience at drive-in theaters, where teenagers flocked for its outrageous spectacle. As film historian David J. Scull observed, B-movies like this thrived on their flaws. Decades later, the film endures, not for terror, but for its place in pop culture's campy Hall of Fame, lampooned by Mystery Science Theater 3000, and beloved for its genuine, if unintentional, laughs. Giant Ant Rampage: Them. In 1954, Warner Bros. Pictures unleashed Them, a film that posed an unexpected question. What if nuclear fallout transformed ants into towering monsters? The answer involved foam and wire puppets, malfunctioning hydraulics, and a reliance on shadowy close-ups. The full-scale mechanical ants were ambitious for their time, but plagued by technical issues. Crew members often had to conceal jerky movements and visible wires with smoke, darkness, and clever camera work. Anecdotes suggest that stars James Whitmore and Edmund Gwenn struggled to maintain composure during takes, especially when delivering serious lines to twitching insect heads. Some even say the set kept a tally of ruined takes due to laughter, adding to the film's chaotic reputation. Despite its outlandish premise, Them resonated with audiences. Released less than 10 years after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, it tapped into atomic age anxieties with just enough gravity to succeed. The film grossed over $2 million domestically, a significant sum for the era, and inspired a wave of post-war monster movies like Tarantula and The Deadly Mantis. Yet few match the spectacle of soldiers incinerating foam ants in a sandstorm. Today, Them is remembered not only as a sci-fi landmark, but also as a prime example of cinematic absurdity, where Cold War dread collided with creature feature mayhem, and somehow it all came together. Rubber Shark Attack: Batman the Movie. In 1966's Batman the Movie, camp reached new heights with the infamous Rubber Shark Attack. Adam West's Batman, dangling from a helicopter ladder, is suddenly beset by a foam shark clinging to his leg. The solution? Bat shark repellent spray, conveniently stored in the Batcopter. The shark, clearly a rubber prop, thrashes unconvincingly as Batman fends it off with deadpan seriousness. The scene, intended as tongue-in-cheek, became an instant classic for its sheer absurdity. Critics and fans alike have celebrated it as the epitome of the show's playful tone. The Rubber Shark Attack remains a beloved moment, endlessly referenced and parodied in pop culture. Atomic Monster Dance. Godzilla, King of the Monsters. When Godzilla, King of the Monsters stomped into theaters in 1956, it introduced American audiences to a new kind of cinematic terror. Yet for all its intended menace, Godzilla's lumbering movements and rubber suit antics sometimes bordered on the ridiculous. The infamous Atomic Monster Dance scene, where Godzilla sways and stomps with almost rhythmic abandon, has since become a favorite among fans for its accidental humor. The suit actor Haruo Nakajima was encased in a costume so heavy and hot that his movements were dictated as much by exhaustion as by direction. What was meant to be a display of unstoppable power instead looked like a monster struggling through a slow-motion conga line. Over time, this scene has been lovingly parodied and celebrated, a testament to how even the most fearsome creatures can end up the stars of their own unintentional comedy routines. Shrunken Head Reveal, the thing that couldn't die. In the crowded field of mid-century horror oddities, few moments match the sheer absurdity of the Shrunken Head Reveal in Universal International's The Thing That Couldn't Die. The plot was already a stretch. A 16th century occultist's severed head, buried for centuries, somehow remains alive, and worse, psychically active. But it was the visual payoff that truly left audiences incredulous. The head, hidden in a hat box, and dramatically unveiled, was unmistakably rubber. Static camera angles and deep shadows tried to mask its lifeless features, but the illusion collapsed under the weight of its own seriousness. As film historian Bill Warren noted in Keep Watching the Skies, many horror films of the era aimed far beyond what their budgets could deliver, and this one overshot by miles. Actors were left to sell the scene with wide-eyed stares and stiff pauses, supposedly under telepathic control. No visual cues, no sound design, just awkward silences and forced reactions. According to genre scholars, such setups often led to suppressed laughter on set. While no cast member ever confirmed it, legends tease that the crew nicknamed the prop Dead Fred and took turns hiding it around the lot between takes. Initial reviews weren't kind. The Los Angeles Times reportedly dismissed the horror as laughably tame, echoing a broader critical consensus that labeled the film as clunky and unconvincing. But over time, that same clumsiness became its charm. By the 1980s, it had resurfaced in late-night horror blocks and fan-compiled VHS tapes, earning a second life as a cult curiosity. Some even speculate that its camp appeal helped inspire later horror comedy hybrids. What was once a failed scare became a punchline, and ironically, a lasting legacy of how far Golden Age horror could stretch the line between the terrifying and the totally ridiculous. Dancing Skeletons, House on Haunted Hill. In House on Haunted Hill, released in 1959, director William Castle delivered a haunted house tale packed with gimmicks and jump scares. But one scene stands out for its sheer camp value. A skeleton, supposedly animated by a vengeful spirit, rises from a vat of acid and dances menacingly toward Vincent Price's character. The effect, achieved with a visible wire and a rubber skeleton, was more likely to provoke giggles than gasps. Castle, ever the showman, even rigged theaters with a plastic skeleton on a wire, dubbed Emergo, to swoop over audiences during screenings. While intended to heighten suspense, the result was often laughter and popcorn throwing. Critics at the time dismissed the scene as pure hokum, but audiences embraced the spectacle. The dancing skeleton became a cult favorite, lampooned in later parodies and celebrated for its gleeful disregard for realism. Castle's willingness to embrace the ridiculous helped cement House on Haunted Hill's legacy as a beloved B-movie. The skeleton's awkward jig remains a highlight, a testament to the era's willingness to trade plausibility for entertainment. Exploding Robot Rampage, Forbidden Planet. In 1956, MGM's Forbidden Planet broke new ground in science fiction, but also delivered one of the era's most unintentionally absurd moments. Robbie the Robot, a towering 7'6" mechanical marvel, was celebrated for his intricate design and blinking electronics. Built at an estimated cost of up to $125,000, Robbie wasn't truly functional, but rather a sophisticated costume loaded with moving parts and flashing panels. The infamous scene arrives when Robbie malfunctions under a moral contradiction, told to kill yet programmed not to harm. What unfolds is a chaotic display of sparking wires, theatrical smoke, and buzzing sound effects. No actual explosion occurs, but the spectacle is so exaggerated that many viewers recall Robbie bursting into flames, a classic case of cinematic misremembering now dubbed a Mandela effect. While original audiences may have found the scene suspenseful, modern viewers often see it as comically overblown. The visible wires, over-the-top effects, and melodramatic pacing push it into camp territory. Some speculate the scene was a sly nod to the film's Shakespearean roots, Forbidden Planet being loosely based on The Tempest, while others chalk it up to practical effects stretched to their limits. Robbie's legacy didn't end on Altair 4th. He went on to appear in The Twilight Zone, The Addams Family, and countless other productions, becoming one of the first robots to achieve pop culture fame. His influence extended to later sci-fi, including Star Trek, whose creator Gene Roddenberry cited Forbidden Planet as a key inspiration. The so-called exploding robot rampage remains one of the most bizarrely memorable scenes of the Golden Age, equal parts ambition, spectacle, and unintended comedy. It's a moment where imagination outpaced technology, and the result was unforgettable for all the wrong and right reasons. Human fly transformation, The Fly. The original The Fly from 1958 is remembered for its chilling premise. A scientist's experiment gone awry, resulting in a grotesque human-insect hybrid. But the transformation scene, meant to horrify, often left audiences more bewildered than frightened. The reveal of the fly-headed scientist, with its oversized, unblinking eyes and twitching mandibles, was both unsettling and oddly comical. The practical effects, though ambitious, couldn't quite bridge the gap between terror and absurdity. Vincent Price, ever the consummate professional, played the moment straight, but even he later admitted the scene bordered on the ridiculous. Over time, the transformation became a cult favorite, not for its scares, but for its campy, unforgettable imagery. Haunted Armor, The Canterville Ghost. In 1944's The Canterville Ghost, a supposedly chilling moment devolved into outright comedy. Charles Laughton, playing the ghost of Sir Simon, tries to frighten American soldiers by clanking down a castle hallway in medieval armor. Instead of terror, the scene provoked laughter. His noisy footsteps, squeaky joints, and exaggerated stumbles resembled a slapstick routine more than a haunting. The tonal mismatch was clear. Wartime audiences got a ghost story laced with physical comedy. Some retrospectives suggest Laughton improvised much of the humor, drawing on his stage background to maximize the absurdity. Crew members reportedly struggled to keep straight faces during filming. While not the only comedy of the World War II era, the film's blend of the supernatural and the silly was distinctive. Critics were split, some dismissed it as lightweight, others enjoyed its playfulness, but audiences took to it. The haunted armor scene in particular became a favorite among classic comedy fans. Rumors linger that Laughton intentionally pushed the scene toward parody, poking fun at Gothic conventions. Whether by design or accident, the result was one of the era's most memorable genre mashups. A ghost whose biggest threat was nearly tripping over his own armor. Flying Car Chase, The Absent-Minded Professor. The 1961 Disney comedy The Absent-Minded Professor is best remembered for its gravity-defying invention, flubber. But while the film's flying car chase was meant to dazzle, it often left audiences more amused than amazed. The special effects, cutting edge for their time, relied on visible wires, awkward rear projection, and toy models that occasionally wobbled through the sky. Instead of a thrilling pursuit, the airborne vehicles sometimes looked like they were floating on strings in a school play. Cast members reportedly struggled to keep straight faces during filming, and even director Robert Stevenson later admitted the sequence was a technical headache. Despite its unintentional comedy, the scene became a beloved example of early effects ambition, inspiring future filmmakers to dream bigger, and perhaps to hide their wires a little better. Haunted Painting Meltdown, The Picture of Dorian Gray. In 1945, MGM delivered a cinematic jolt with its adaptation of Oscar Wilde's The Picture of Dorian Gray. Shot mostly in black and white, the film suddenly erupts into full Technicolor during its climax, a shocking tonal shift that left audiences reeling. The moment, a grotesque reveal of Dorian's portrait, transformed from youthful beauty into a decaying monstrosity, rendered in lurid reds, greens, and purples. The horror was the work of Yvonne Le Laurent Albright, whose hyper-detailed painting blurred the line between realism and nightmare. Built up over months with painstaking oil layers to reflect Dorian's moral decay, the final portrait now resides at the Art Institute of Chicago. The Technicolor insert was more than a stylistic gamble. It was a deliberate symbolic contrast. Film historians note that the color sequences were shot separately to preserve the black and white film's mood, but the jarring switch gave the portrait an almost supernatural presence, as if it belonged to another world. That was precisely the intention. Critics were divided. Variety praised the bold use of color to heighten psychological horror, while the New York Times called the effect startling if not excessive, a polite nod to its divisiveness. Some argued the scene clashed so violently with the rest of the film that it bordered on parody. Legend has it that early test screenings triggered walkouts, not from violence, but from sheer discomfort. The grotesque, surreal image overwhelmed viewers unprepared for such intensity in an otherwise restrained studio drama. Today, the moment stands as one of Golden Age cinema's most bizarre tonal pivots, an artistic risk that still sparks debate nearly 8 decades later. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a like and comment. Also consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell to get notified of our new videos each week. Thanks for watching.